everybody. Welcome to the Liftoff Journey podcast. I'm Jeannie Walden, your host. Liftoff Journey is a part of Liftoff Enterprises. We're a full-service media company that also brings you the TV show Liftoff with Jeannie Walden and provides consulting services that help companies build their brands and grow their bottom line. In Liftoff Journeys, you can expect to be inspired by authentic conversations with real people who have made decisions along the way that have led them to exactly where they are today. And guess what? Those decisions caused them to take turns, change careers, fail, learn, and grow. But at the end of the day, these people are business leaders, inspirational leaders, and exactly where they need to be. I hope you enjoy Liftoff Journeys as we follow the journeys of so many great people and learn about how you can take your own journey as well. If you're ready, so am I. Let's get started with today's episode. All right, here we are at our next episode of Liftoff Journeys, and I'm here with Sergio Kopelev, a good friend of mine who I am thrilled was able to come on the show today. Hey, Sergio.
Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
We're so excited to talk to you. So everybody here needs to know that Sergio is, first of all, one of the busiest men ever. He's always up to at least 7 things at the same time. In addition, he's one of the funnest people that you ever get to hang out with. So if you ever run into this guy on the street, stop, hang out with him. He has great stories to tell. And that's why he's a perfect guest for this episode of Liftoff Journeys. We're going to hear a little bit about what Sergio is doing today, but more importantly about his journey of how he's got to where he is in life right now and why nothing is happenstance. It all happens for a reason. So Sergio, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about what you're doing today.
You're very kind. I really appreciate it. It's interesting. Like, I do so many different things in so many different areas. And, the joke is, it's attention deficit, right? And I've learned how to take my disability and turn it into a superpower. Always keep that in mind, that whatever makes you unique makes you unique, right? So you're very kind. And yeah, if people run into me, most likely it's going to be in a Las Vegas casino now, where I spend most of my time. I'm kidding. But no, I live in Vegas now.
Because you live there. Let's just hold on. Let's just interrupt and say it's because you live in Vegas now, not because you have a need to not leave.
Yeah, totally. Because I live in Vegas. My journey is sort of an interesting one. Like, I came to the U.S. I don't look like the part, but I came to the U.S. as a refugee. I'm a first-generation refugee. I was born in Soviet Russia. We were Jewish dissidents for a bit. My family is highly political. My grandfathers had a much more interesting journey than I did ever, because my great uncle fought with Lenin and against Stalin, and so when we came to the U.S., for me as a kid, it was a real shock, because when I was in Russia, I was quite idealistic about the fact that Soviet Russia was good. And then my whole world turned upside down when I learned that no, that's all a lie. And so I came to New York and lived in the hood. 8 of us lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where, separated. The living room separated with a curtain. So my grandparents had the bedroom. My aunt, uncle, and my cousin had one half of the living room, and then we had the other half. My parents and I. And so small family. And grew up really in the type of poverty where it's just, we don't talk about it in polite society. And fortunately for me, I was able to get out, a little education, a little good luck, a little hard work. When you combine it all together, it produces results.
Now, how old were you when you came over as a refugee?
I was 8. We came in the 70s during the second wave of Russian immigrants. Jimmy Carter, good thing he did, he made a deal with Brezhnev. So in the 70s, Russia had a horrible famine. And so Brezhnev, I'm trying to think who, I guess it was Brezhnev back then, made a deal with Jimmy Carter where he would allow Jews out of Russia to reunite with families that were separated during World War II. And the idea was to go to Israel. And then when we all left Russia, we wound up in Austria, kind of in a holding spot. And if somebody said, I want to go to Israel, you'd be on the next plane to Israel. So, but my grandmother, Israel in the 70s was having quite a different, and my grandmother she said, I've been through one war. I'm not doing another one. She went through World War II with 2 infant kids. And she said, I'm not going to another war zone. And so we decided to come to the U.S. Then we had to apply to be into the U.S. refugee program. So we had to spend a year while we were trying to get the U.S. to accept us, because we had no documents, we had no money, we had no nothing. So we finally got here. Right before 1980, and moved, into sort of. We didn't even move to the Russian area of New York because it was too expensive. We moved into the hood, just because we didn't have anything. And then my mom got a job, my dad got a job. My dad did everything imaginable at first, but then wound up working for Katz's Deli in Manhattan on Houston Street. Sent a salami to a boy in the army. And so my dad made sandwiches for a living. So, I mean, one of the things, so I'm pretty successful now, right? I'm a vice president of a multinational consulting firm. I came out of the Big Four. I was in the government first, then I came out of the Big Four. In the government, I ran a federal task force out of Main Justice, and I've spoken in front of Congress, and so fairly accomplished. And it's really interesting to think about like how I got here, right? Because we came from nothing. But that being said, I sometimes, I do a certain amount of media and talk to people, and I teach college now. And so I always sort of talk about the fact that if you put in hard work, you can make it. And in some ways, I feel a little bit like an imposter when I say that, because while it's true, we came here with nothing, no English, no education, no, American education. My grandmother was a physician in Russia. My grandfather was a PhD scientist in Russia with several patents. My mom, taught college in Russia. So in some ways, while it's easy to say, yeah, I'm like a self-made man, my dad made sandwiches for a living. The reality is my family has all been very successful. So in the mindset, and this has really been, I knew what success looked like, right? Because I don't really play golf or play baseball, but if you listen to golf players and if you listen to baseball players, what they'll tell you is unless you can see in your mind the bat coming in contact with the ball or the club coming in contact with the ball and that ball sailing over the fairway, you're never going to hit it. You're never going to hit a home run if you can't see that ball coming in contact with that bat and then and then going over the wall. And I never really understood that until probably the last 4 or 5 years. But one of the things that my family has allowed me to do is to know what success looks like, even if it's not in front of you, and then you can plot it. As people, when you stand up, you have to stand up with your head first. And so I'm a big believer that we create our own reality. And if you think it, if you build it, it will happen. And so I really do, physically it works that way. You can't stand up unless your head is the one that's going up. And I think, thematically or emotionally, you're never going to be successful unless you can see your head moving up, unless you can see that bat coming in contact with that ball, and you can see that ball going over the fairway or going over, the wall at Wrigley Field. And I think that's the key to success.
It's fascinating that you take that all the way back to how successful your family was in Russia. My grandparents on my mom's side came over from Italy, where they were very successful in the banking industry. And of course, here in the US, they were building a lot of the bridges and tunnels in Pittsburgh and doing a lot of day labor and putting lots of family members through schools and just paying for their support. But previously they had been, very well to do. And I don't think a lot of people go back to their lineage as much as they could to know that they were born into an incredible opportunity or a family that's already pre-laid the demonstration of success, and all they need to do is, as you said, stand up, put your head first, envision it, and move with it. So I love that. I think that's a great perspective.
Yeah, and so as much like I have friends who are like, oh my God, look at what you've accomplished, right? And I don't know, I feel a little bit like an imposter. It's different than when you grew up in Appalachia and your parents couldn't read, and now you look at and she's the CEO of a .com and finished Harvard or whatever. Like, that's impressive, right? Because I was very fortunate that I had a successful family. So as much as it sounds like we came from nothing and I lived in poverty, so I just didn't want to be an imposter when we talk about it. But yeah, I grew up in poverty where now it's all hipsters, but back then it was all Section 8 housing. It was a terrible crime-ridden neighborhood that was controlled by gangs because it wasn't really suitable for human residents. But that's just the neighborhood in Brooklyn that we happened to move into, and it's a great story that, hey, I came from the other side of the tracks. But the reality is that my family at least gave me a little bit of not financially, but sort of emotionally and intellectually, they gave me the ability to see success and to know that success is there.
As you grew up here, did you have an idea of what you wanted to be when you grew up? Are you one of the types of people that likes to explore everything? Did you follow a passion? For a while, I wanted to be a cashier because I liked cash registers. So we're all very grateful that I didn't go down that route permanently, but I was a cashier for a while. So I did live out my dreams. I also wanted to be a veterinarian, and I wanted to be a teacher and all these other things. What did you want to be as you were growing up? Did you have an idea?
That's a great question. Not really. So I came sort of in elementary school, and I was very little. I've always been little. I'm 5'7" now, but when I was really young, I was really little, for my age. And so when I first came to the U.S. in 5th grade, it was awful. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. I got my ass kicked constantly. I got picked on by everyone in school. I didn't know enough English to know when the kids were making fun of me. And so it was horrible. And so I started running with a local Hispanic street gang for protection, for survival. And then I got in trouble, pretty substantive trouble, when I was, I guess it was when I was just getting ready to go to high school. And by that time I was already kind of a baby gangster and a pretty bad guy. And when I got in trouble, fortunately, instead of going to juvie, they were going to put me in juvie till my 18th birthday. And that would have been bad. But fortunately, I went into a diversion program where they intended to divert at-risk youth instead of going to prison, to try to see if we can make something ourselves. And it had two elements to it. One was the 4-H Wilderness Challenge, where they took us out into the woods and taught us how to rappel and confidence courses and do all this outdoorsy stuff, which as an inner city kid, I was like, yeah, it's fine. It gets me out, and I don't have to be in Brooklyn for a weekend. But then the other part was the Police Explorer Post. And the Police Explorer Post, I got introduced to law enforcement. And I say this, that in pretty much a few days, I met the biggest, toughest, best equipped, best funded, best armed, tightest gang in the city of New York, the New York City Police Department. And after that, I didn't want to be anything else but a cop. So I'm career law enforcement. I've always sort of felt like a cop. I liked who I was as a cop. My first job out of high school, I was an EMT on a New York City ambulance, which I loved as well. And it made me feel good. And I didn't want to be a victim. And so for me, a big drive of who I was, and maybe even today, was the reason I wanted to be in law enforcement is because they were the ultimate, they ruled the streets. And I didn't. And so I was like, well, yeah, the gangsters, like you're protected. Like I didn't get my ass kicked once I started with my friends, but the cops still messed with them, but nobody messed with the cops. So my goal from fairly young, I was never in trouble again. I kept 2 jobs to pay restitution because I had some issues from that. I had some police officers who really took an interest in me. So I, from a fairly young, from high school years, I decided that I wanted to be in law enforcement because it was the toughest job, that I could imagine, where I would never be picked on. And I think that's been a driver for me for a very long time. And then when I left law enforcement, and I came to San Diego, I got into consulting because I got recruited to it by a former boss's boss who was an FBI agent or an assistant director of the bureau, and sort of stayed in that same field for quite a while.
That's great. So do you feel like you were mentored by the police and different people in
Yeah,
police units?
yeah. So one of my accomplishments when I was in law enforcement is and my parents split. There's a lot of excuses people can come up with. Like my parents split, and maybe that contributed to it a little bit. And my dad was kind of out of my life at that time, and then I got close to him when I finally grew, became an adult. But for me, it was really, like their parents were like, "Oh my God, my kid is never going to accomplish anything. I'll give you my mother's phone number." Right? Because if I could accomplish something as difficult as I was, anybody can. So yeah, there was a guy named Sergeant Don Amos who took a lot of interest in me and spent a lot of time with me, and I think that was a very positive male influence in my life. And so because of that, I sort of am who I am. But I also will credit my mother for my mother as a studious person. My dad was brilliant and really made sandwiches for a living, right? But he was, from a street smart standpoint, he was a very street savvy kind of guy, and he knew somebody who could get anything, and that's very much me, right? I've never met a stranger, and my dad, and that's all my dad. My mom might not have been as smart intellectually, but she was very accomplished because in Russian it sounds better, but basically some people accomplish things with their heads, and some people accomplish things with their behinds by sitting in a chair and doing it, right? And so I was very fortunate that I got both from my mother and from my dad. And so once I figured out that school was a good thing, it was great. Right. But, it is a lot of positive role models. A lot of it is drive. A lot of it is HDD. And I was never happy with anything. And I was never focused on any one thing. And I just kept driving. And every time, you reach the top of the mountain, for whatever reason, I see the next mountain and I want to climb that. And so so I was very fortunate that drive was built into me from the time I was little.
Yeah, that's great. So you've built this whole career, and it's been pretty phenomenal with some twists and turns along the way. But even today, as a successful leader at a large company, you still enjoy other hobbies that get to kind of challenge you to think differently or follow your passions, right?
Yeah, very much so. And I don't know why that is, but yeah, I mean, and it sounds so odd, but it's also sort of organic. Like I have two startups that I'm with my friends because I enjoy it, right? I have a travel startup, which is a kind of a big play called Viversi, where Viversi, we're building a community and a marketplace where individuals can securely combine resources to achieve travel they couldn't on their own. Right, it sort of combines the best of Meetup and Airbnb into one, right? And then I have another startup, which is a spy school startup called TradeMarket Adventures, where we give people a chance to spend 4 days, all inclusive, living the life of a NOC. Right, in the intelligence community, there's two types of spies. There are case officers who train at Langley or in Quantico, or they train at the farm or in Quantico. And they're official, like their paychecks, they're generally associated with the agency or the FBI. They're sworn agents. And then there's NOCs, which are non-official cover, folks who never touch the intelligence establishment, but they get trained in safe houses, and they would then spend their life working for banks and universities and different things, but they have their career. Right, they're non-official cover operatives, which are they're real spies, and so we give you that experience of being a NOC for 4 days, where you get to literally
I love
live
both of those companies. I think they're both brilliant. Especially Weverse. My husband Vince is trying to plan a vacation and was looking at, if you go individually, this is how much it costs. If everybody pulled their resources together, look what we could do. And there's such a need for that right now, especially now that kind of COVID bans are lifted and everybody can work remotely or hybrid and get to explore that. That's cool. And the spy thing, it sounds amazing to me. It really
you'll
does.
be you and Vince. We'll have you and Vince. That we're doing it in two places: one in Louisville, Kentucky, and one in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so we'll have you out. When I was in law enforcement, I spent some time undercover, and so when I was undercover, my my case officer was a guy named Terry Rancorn, who's a legendary undercover guy who spent, Terry has trained pretty much every UC the FBI has put out for the last 20 years and ran both the FBI's, ran one of the undercover training programs, and also used to work in their black bag squad. Just an amazing guy. And we've been lifelong friends since we worked together. And then one day while I was in Mexico and bored on vacation, really all of these things happened because, after 3 days, I was like, okay, I've drank enough mojitos and smoked enough cigars where there's got to be something fun to do. And I just started playing around, and we came up with this TradeMarket Adventures concept because I remember having that experience of being undercover and living another life, and it was kind of exciting, but most people don't get that experience. And those skills that you learn have a value to it. One of the things that we talked about, like tradecraft, like it's fun because for 4 days you get to experience another life, right? You still you, but we teach you, and you live the life of a NOC. Well, what would happen if you weren't, a celebrity and you were a NOC, right? And then and that's fun. But the reality of it, there's a reason why retired spies are in such high demand, right? There's a reason why in my corporate job, in my day job, I get paid a lot of money to do what I do because of the skills that I've acquired during my time in the government. And that goes across the board. We have a group of mentors that are going to be our mentors for the clients that are pretty amazing, and they're all very accomplished, very successful people. So you got to ask yourself, why is it that spies are in such high demand and are so successful, whether in the government work or in the private sector? And the reality is that having these skills help people get better jobs. It helps because those skills are useful in business and sales and other things. It helps them in interpersonal interactions, right? It helps you talk to the opposite sex. It helps you be confident enough and to ask the right questions. It helps you know when people are lying to you, right? All are useful things for social interactions, dating, personal relationships, whatever you want to call it. And then number three, it helps you be safe, right? So the goal of this training is to have fun, right? It's 4 days of fun, but I really focus all of our mentors on the fact that we're looking to give skills to our clients that will serve them beyond just a 4-day adventure. Like you go on a cruise, it's great, but then you come home, all you have is the pictures. Here, you get actual skills that you can use going forward to, get a better job, have better relationships, and then stay safer, where you know how to spot a secret camera when you check into an Airbnb. And you recognize that when you check in a hotel and you think it's your space, there's 100 people who have access to your room. And being aware of those things and knowing what it looks like when you're leaving the mall during Christmas time and you think all of a sudden you recognize that somebody's following you, right? Now, they're not following you because they're Russian spies, right? But they might be following you because they want to mug you. And so it gives you those skills, teaches you what to do if that happens and how to avoid that and so on.
That's so fascinating. And when your friend gets Tradecraft ready to go mainstream, let me know. I'll have you on the TV show because it's an incredibly helpful and useful, I think, product and experience.
Yeah, we just at the risk of being too pitchy, we just launched our website officially, and so we're starting to. Our first adventure is set for we have a couple of different. We have the in-person sort of the flagship adventure, and the first one is going to be beginning of April in Las Vegas. But we also have an online training component because there's a lot of folks that might want to have that experience and might want to have the training, but they just don't have the resources to go to Las Vegas for 4 days. And it's inexpensive. I mean, it's a $5,000 vacation. And so they might not have that ability. So we have an online component. We have an on-demand component. So there's different ways for people to get involved. So yeah, we're pretty excited.
Yeah, we should talk about that more later. I have a completely random question for you. So there was that movie a few years ago, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was about Chuck Berry, who was supposedly a NOC that was also a TV show host from The Gong Show. And there was a whole movie that followed his life where he supposedly had this double life where, by day, he's TV show host. on the weekends at night, he's running all of these spy campaigns and even gets caught. I don't know if you saw that movie or not. I'm curious if you did, if you think, if it's real, but you're saying no, so you didn't see it tonight.
I didn't see it. It's interesting. Things like that happen most of the time, right? Most of the time, NOCs wind up serving overseas and have specific focus and specific missions, right? They work for Citibank in Moscow, right? Because their job is to develop local, intelligence, local assets. Just like like one of our mentors, the part of the program is a guy named Jack Barsky, who's actually the American word is NOC. The Russian term for it is illegal, right? So if you've seen the show The Americans, Jack did that for 10 years during the Cold War, right? He was German, just like the characters actually. I think in The Americans he was German. He was recruited by the Stasi because he was a scientist, he was a chemist, and he had the right ideological outlook in life. He was a dedicated communist, and he got recruited by the Stasi to work on behalf of the KGB in the U.S. So he came to the U.S., assumed a fake identity, and lived in it for 10 years and sent coded messages back to Russia and traveled using dead drops and fake passports and all the things that we were going to teach. But he had a very specific mission, and then to really report on American culture, because Russia had a misunderstanding of kind of how this country worked. They figured it out, right? So if 2016 and 2020 taught us anything, is that Russia's got it figured out now about what we're all about and how we function. So it's interesting. So I don't know if Chuck Berry was a NOC. I don't know if I would utilize a TV show host, because I don't know how much access they have to individuals with proper intelligence. If you watch the movie Argo is based on a true story where the CIA set up a moving company in order to rescue hostages. So I would use Argo more of an example than Chuck Berry, but now I'm going to watch that movie and see what
Yeah, you're going to have to watch the movie. Yeah. It was just fascinating. All right. Yeah. I want to know if he was really a spy, because you watch this whole movie and the people, of course, people behind the scenes, it's the standard, after that kid, robbed the house, I knew he was always a bad boy. I saw him not being nice to the cat after it was done, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's it. So your journey, Sergio, has been driven by security, success, safety, and creating a world that's a better place, which I think is a phenomenal journey. And it's great to see that it's really been consistent your entire life. You've done different adventures and you're always involved with different adventures, but they've all evolved around, a couple key principles. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, and I honestly think, and this is sort of a philosophical thing, and I'm not the deepest philosophical guy. That's not what I'm known for, right? I work hard, but in recent years, I've been a little bit more philosophical, and I will tell you that one of the things is that I don't know I'm not a religious person, right? I'm Jewish, but more cultural than religious, and I will tell you is it doesn't matter what you call whatever power of the universe, right? Some people call it Jesus. Some people call it the universe, Selena. Some people call it whatever life force, right? Some people call it Yahweh and Muhammad. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but there's some sort of order to the universe that if you put in good things into the universe, good things come back to you, right? And really, I really struggle with the fact, is that true? Why do good things happen to bad people, and why do bad things happen to good people? And in my personal thing, I don't know if any of that is true. The fact that if you do good things, the universe will reward you. But what I will tell you, in my experience, is that if you approach life with that from that direction, it doesn't matter if it's true. It just makes your life better, right? It doesn't matter whether it's real or whether it's just our own fictional self-belief. That when I feel good about myself, good things happen, right? And ultimately, that's I think why I've been successful, because I have this sort of a casual relationship, and because it costs nothing to be nice to somebody. That's the reality is, right? by being nice to somebody else, it costs me nothing, right? It doesn't, it like just saying something nice. There's no cost. There's no opportunity cost. There's no time cost. You be nice, right? Being nice to the waitress, being nice to the clerk, being nice to somebody that you're sitting next to on an airplane, right? So it costs nothing to be nice, and ultimately, what you get out of it is a great benefit. And so overall, I think that a lot of my success can be attributed, number one, to other people. I've been extremely fortunate that folks have been very helpful. And I think the reason folks are helpful is because I try to be nice to people, right? I don't always succeed, but that's, if I could leave one thing, it is the fact that it costs you nothing to be kind. And if everybody's kind to everybody else, we'll have a much better world.
I love that. It's such a great note to end on. Thank you so much for being our guest on Liftoff Journeys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's very flattering. It really is. It's very, very flattering.
Absolutely. All right. Bye. Well, there you have it. Another episode of Liftoff Journeys. Were you inspired? I hope so. Tune in next week to listen to another journey from another incredible business leader and learn how to follow your passion down the road to success. And most of all, you know that this podcast is going to be absolutely incredible because it's produced by the team at Castos Productions. They're amazing to work with. They take all of the post-production worry off of my team's plate for both the audio and the video version. If you're looking for a great podcast producer, please do check out Castos. Go to castos.com/services. Don't forget to tell them that Jeannie from Liftoff sent you. They've got a special promotional offer waiting for you.